This is Sales Players, and I'm your host, Jesse Woodbury. I've spent my career selling for early stage companies, and now I'm on a mission to help reps and operators find tips, strategies, and resources for generating more pipeline, closing more deals, and building wealth in tech sales. To learn more, visit salesplayers.co. Over the past couple weeks, I have been part of a number of different interesting conversations with several executive sales leaders, one sales consultant who consults large companies on their sales hiring and strategy, and then a bunch of different founders as well. And I wanted to take today's episode and actually share some of the insights that I've captured from those conversations. Now, unfortunately, those were not podcast episodes. I wish I could have recorded some of those, but they were not that type of call. They were more of a cell phone type conversation. And a lot of these people are folks that I've worked for or worked with. And some of them were introduced to me over the last couple of weeks because I'm trying to do some research on the industry and I'm trying to better understand the outlook for software and tech sales specifically. There is a lot of noise out there, especially if you're on the socials. You're hearing all about AI replacing jobs. You're hearing about macroeconomy stuff, all kinds of change going on, and you're probably experiencing some slowdown in your business, or at the very least a holding pattern with your deal cycles. A lot of folks in my network are saying that they're working on deals that are taking much longer than they normally would, or they're stalling out, or budgets are getting cut, layoffs are happening. There's a lot of craziness going on. So I wanted to share just a couple of insights that I gathered from these conversations that I've held over the last few weeks. So let's get into it. The first one from my notes here is that hiring is actually up right now. If you're listening to this podcast right when it comes out, it is early September. And I think we're experiencing what they call the September bounce. Typically when hiring teams and executive leaders are looking at their Q4 and Q1 outlook, they're starting to think about headcount and their plan for growing their team so that they can dial in for the coming year. So we are seeing that after Labor Day here in the US. Lots of execs are back in the office and people are starting to make decisions about their hiring plans again for Q4 and Q1. I actually noticed on LinkedIn that the account executive title spiked by about 25% in terms of open opportunities according to LinkedIn Jobs. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it seems like it just from what I'm seeing that there is definitely a bounce here going on in September. So if you're out there looking for your next role or you're out of work right now is the time to get serious about locking something in, because what tends to happen in this industry is at the end of September, things will slow down slightly. And then by the end of October, things might fall off almost completely before the November and December holidays. So if you're looking for that role, you'll want to get pretty serious about putting yourself out there, networking, having a lot of conversations, and I guess also putting out applications as well. Although if you know me and you've gone through my coaching program, you know that I'm not a big fan of just filling out a bunch of applications. Most great roles in tech sales come from your network. They come from finding a former manager or a peer that you've worked with, or connecting with someone in a meaningful way and networking your way into those great opportunities. So that's number one. Hiring seems to be picking up, at least in terms of account executive roles. That was the metric I was looking at. And there does seem to be a September bounce going on. So definitely run at it if you are looking for your next thing. On that same note, one trend that I'm hearing about a lot and experiencing is that remote roles are a lot harder to find right now. A lot of my clients, a lot of my colleagues, and a lot of people I've talked to have been asking for candidates to relocate to places like San Francisco or New York because they have an in-office requirement. There is less remote roles available right now. That's across the board, regardless of what role you're in tech sales, whether you're an SDR, an account executive, or even a sales leader. There seems to be a pretty big push to get folks into an office space. And the biggest markets for that are going to be the Bay Area and New York City, with, of course, other markets like Seattle and Austin and Chicago being pretty prevalent as well. But the trend does seem to be less remote work and more hybrid or even full-time in office. And that's even for startups. I was talking to a sales leader at a hot startup that was saying, we want to build the culture and team in San Francisco. That way we've got that connectivity and that energy that can only exist from an in-office team. And again, this is for an account executive, an enterprise account executive role. This isn't an SDR leader or an SDR team or an inside sales team. This was for an enterprise account executive role. So remote is definitely getting harder. If you're in a remote role right now, or if you live somewhere where you can't relocate, then maybe hang on to your current role until things change, if they change. And you'll definitely have to be a lot more strategic when you go find your next role, because again, remote roles are just not as prevalent as they were even a few years ago. And then the other trend I'm seeing related to that is that the remote roles that are out there tend to be for pretty early stage startup companies in the Series A, maybe Series B category. So very early stage with just a modest amount of funding. Those folks, to be competitive and get the best candidates, are looking further than just the Bay Area, New York, Austin, Seattle, Chicago. But the trend does seem to be that there is a lot of opportunity. If you happen to be in one of those cities, you have the pick of the litter in terms of great opportunities. And there is a lot of really cool startups right now on both coasts that are building some really cool things. So that's the next one there. So from there, one other trend that I'm hearing about is that exec sales leaders, that's CROs, VPs of sales, they're looking for sales reps who are scrappy. I have heard that word come up so much over the last couple of weeks. What does that even mean? Well, instead of looking for someone who spent the last 5 years working at a big tech co as an account executive, they're looking for people who've spent time in early stage startups, who have been in chaotic environments, who've been able to deliver results without having a big logo behind them, and who are generally self-starters, people who don't need to be told what to do. They know what success looks like, and they know how to go out and make things happen. So that is definitely a trend that I'm seeing and hearing from people I'm talking to, is that exec sales leaders are on the hunt for more scrappy reps, not big polished reps from big companies that have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of tenure at a large firm, but rather people who've spent time in early stage environments where there was minimal resources, very little enablement, and you generally, again, had to be kind of a self-starter, someone who goes out and makes stuff happen. What's behind this trend? It seems like just because we are in wartime right now in the industry, again, back to my earlier comments, you're probably feeling a little bit of a holding pattern in a lot of the deals you're working on. You might feel like it's taking longer than it used to get a deal done or to generate an opportunity, and that is 100% the case. And that is why I think sales leaders are looking for reps who are more scrappy, who can go get it done and go figure things out and are thinking outside of the box. And they're not just going to come in and run the same playbook that they had at, name the big company. So scrappy reps, that's that one. The other trend that I'm seeing is actually a lot of other industries outside of software are taking advantage of the fact that there's been a bunch of layoffs and there's a tighter job market in the software industry. So what I'm seeing is a lot of like manufacturing companies or people that do heavy machinery or even media, and a bunch of adjacent industries or different industries from software are trying to recruit reps who have experience working at a SaaS company or an AI company. I think that's really interesting and something that I haven't seen much of over my decade plus career in software. Throughout my career, I've been pretty focused on just tech and software opportunities, so I've never really considered switching to a different type of industry, but I am having a lot of people knock on my door asking about whether I'd be interested in selling manufacturing equipment or heavy machinery and a bunch of other different industries like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. The other trend I'm picking up on is that outbound is just about dead. And again, you're probably feeling this in your day-to-day. You're probably not getting the same amount of responses to your outreach or to your cold calls as you were even 2 years ago. And sales leaders are finally starting to come to terms with this and think through how they plan to continue generating pipeline, not just for the rest of this year, but into next year and beyond. The market is very saturated, as you all know. There is a lot of outreach going on. There's a lot of automation going on. And now people are using AI tools to write up an entire sequence and blast that out to a list. And it's really not personal anymore. And prospects are over it. Response rates are at an all-time low. So what can you do about that? The follow-up question I had for some of these leaders that mentioned this was, what are you doing about it? And most are trying to invest in areas like channel sales or investing more into existing customer expansions. And then, of course, investing in things like demand gen marketing that are going to help drive inbounds and hand raiser type leads for their teams. It's a slow process. It's a big transition because for the longest time in this industry, it was pretty much a numbers game. If you were good at reaching out to people and you had good messaging and you were personal about it, you could likely set a couple meetings a week and build some really good pipeline. But that's just not the case at this point in 2025. So if you're in a full outbound role right now, whether that's SDR or account executive, it's time to start thinking about other ways that you can generate pipeline in your territory. And again, some ways to do that are through networking, through building a Rolodex, through channel partnerships, leveraging your marketing, leveraging content, and those sorts of things. That's a pretty nuanced one. And I realize that I don't have all the answers, and it sounds like the people I talk to don't either. Everyone's still trying to wrap their head around what's next in the tech industry if outbound is completely a bust, right? If you can't get the results that you expect from outbound, you really can't rely on that as your pipeline strategy or your sales strategy. A lot of people are thinking through, what comes next from there. On that same note, something I'm hearing a lot about from leaders and teams is the importance of education in their sales cycle. And this is something that is not completely new, but the trend of investing more resources in educating prospects and customers is somewhat new. And what I mean by that is a lot of these people I talk to are focused on enabling their reps to be good educators and consultants to their prospects. That way they can help them better understand the industry and then understand the value proposition of the software that they're selling or the AI that they're selling, because they've educated that prospect or that customer on the benefits, but also the industry at large, not just the benefits of their services or software, but some of the specific challenges in the industry, and trying to do things like going deep into things like proof of concept or extended trials or even product-led growth. So if you're someone who doesn't rely much on educating your customers, it's probably a good time to start thinking about your strategy there. How is it that you're becoming an industry expert? And what are you doing to close the gap on that front so that you can be a resource for your prospects that they want to come back to, and almost becoming a subject matter expert, being someone who knows the industry so well, knows their challenges so well that you can build that trust and credibility with your buyers. So that's education in the sales process. I already mentioned this, but just to reiterate, there seems to be a pretty big investment in existing customers. I think a lot of exec leaders and founders are realizing that it's much easier to expand existing customers than it is to go out and find net new logos. That's 100% the case, and it has been for a while, but we're really at a point now where it's quite obvious that the path of least resistance is going to existing customers and figuring out new lines of business, new opportunities to upsell or expand their contract and expand their usage so that they're getting the full value out of the solution and growing revenue from those existing customers. So a lot of people in my network are talking about transitioning over into roles like customer success or account management, because it gives you an opportunity to go in and work with existing customers and find new opportunities to drive revenue. And I think a lot of companies from these conversations I've had, a lot of these companies are investing heavily in their CS motion and making sure they're providing really strong support and enablement for their current customers. The next trend I wrote down was it seems like the vitamin products are really stalling out. And just to go back to the analogy that I've brought up on the show before, there's really two types of products in tech. There's vitamins and painkillers. And a lot of tech products or vitamins are nice to have products. And there's a ton of those. There's new vitamin products hitting the market every single day, especially with this AI gold rush. People are able to launch a product or an app pretty quickly and do so with a really small team. But in a lot of cases, they haven't done the research on the product market fit, or they don't understand whether or not this product will really solve a major pain point for their clients. And so if you're in a company right now and you're selling a product that is nice to have, that's not a core business technology that your prospects or your customers can't live without, then you might want to start thinking about your strategy there and how you might want to go move to a company that is selling a painkiller product. And painkiller products, again, they're core business technology. Your prospect company can't run their business without that application or without that tech. And so you want to think about the best way to get yourself to a painkiller product company, because talking about large budget cuts in a major enterprise, those painkiller products are going to stick around because they have to have them to operate, versus that vitamin product that's a nice to have that might improve some workflow a little bit or deliver a nice UI to the users, but doesn't solve that key pain in a business and isn't that core business technology. And the last trend that I put down here in my notes was there seems to be a huge volume of AI startups entering the market. A lot of them have a single founder or maybe a very small key team of people, anywhere from 3 to 4 people running the company. I was talking to this CRO who said, I think we're pretty close to seeing a 3-person billion-dollar tech company in the next few years. Maybe that's already happened. I don't know. Actually, there probably is already somebody out there who's pretty close. But with AI, the barrier of entry has gone way down. So there's a lot of people starting companies around AI products and apps that, again, with a skeleton crew of people, are generating revenue and driving sales. And so there does seem to be some opportunities in those small companies for sellers. And there does seem to be opportunities to come in and grow industries and create new categories. but I tend to recommend most reps should not join a company before a certain stage. It can be a lot more risky, and sometimes cash burns pretty quickly, especially in these AI startups. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Does this track? Thanks for listening.